A couple of things before I begin. A lot of talk about personal brands. I mean, I started branding without realizing I was branding myself. 2005, one of the first bloggers, one of the first podcasters, sorry, with a fake accent, called Across the Sound with Steve Rebell. And somehow I came up with the name Jaffe Juice. And Jaffe Juice, I'm Jaffe Juice everywhere. What is Jaffe Juice? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's alcoholic and it has Tabasco sauce in it. So I learned a lot about presenting and presenting oneself and being proud of the way you present yourself. Everything communicates. Everyone communicates. You know, I see a lot of brand marketers wearing jeans today, and I say, you know, wearing jeans doesn't make you an entrepreneur, nor do standing desks. They've all got standing desks, and they think they're entrepreneurs. They aren't. So everything, every part of me today should communicate something to you, whether it's my socks, you know, whether it's the orange shirt that's meant to tell you that I'm either colorblind or creative, I suppose. There are other things as well. For example, never present with a lanyard on. I did this on purpose. How could you respect yourself so little to actually have a lanyard on? You know, people see your beautiful clothes. Another thing is the wallet. Is that a wallet in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? You don't need that either as well. So as a male, for example, it's important to, you know, be able to make sure that there are no bulges in your pockets, or at least not ones that you don't want to communicate as well. Before I became a serial entrepreneur, I was doing a lot of sales training. And I came up with one presentation called PowerPoint Doesn't Suck, You Do. And the whole idea is like guns don't kill people, it's the people. Yeah. So the whole idea there was that, you know, we use PowerPoint as a crutch instead of this incredible way to liberate ourselves and empower ourselves. I love PowerPoint when it's done well. And one of the things that I used to do in the presentations, when it was actually quite mean, I'm a sadist, in the middle of a presentation, I would literally close the laptop and I'd say, power just went out, you're on your own. If you can't actually deliver your entire presentation without the slides, what the hell are you doing? You're not prepared. I mentor at the Founders Institute. And by the way, none of what I'm saying right now has anything to do with my presentation today. That's called improv. But at the Founders Institute, it happened to someone, and he did brilliantly. He did brilliantly, and I gave him top rating just for his courage. Just for his courage. But here's a little tip for you as well, a third tip, and then I'll get into why I'm really here, which is always have a printout of your presentation. Have them in slide view or notes view. It's so easy to do, and yet we mess it up. We forget that. I sometimes forget that as well because I'm human, i.e. I'm lazy, i.e. I forget, etc. So that's just a little bit of kind of some non sequiturs and some thoughts, you know, that I had talking about personal brands. I'm a little concerned because, you know, I don't know whether I'm the warm-up act or not of the big keynote panel, but I'm worried about this keynote panel. They're expecting over 80 million live Facebook and Periscope viewers. They're going to obliterate the debate that happened earlier in the week. But I'm concerned because that Gary Vee guy, he's low energy, low tone in a sense, you know. So I'm not sure if he'll deliver. And of course, Bonnen doesn't like to say anything as well. So I better make sure that I warm up with some energy for you guys and make sure that you can leave with something. Actually, one more tip for you. People are incredibly, incredibly forgetful. Incredibly. That's why the 30-second spot still exists. My first book, which was a best-selling book 11 years ago, was called Life After the 30-Second Spot. Seth Godin once said, advertising is the tax we pay for being unremarkable. I said, I'm quoting myself, which shows you I'm delusional as well, and a narcissist, but frequency is the tax we pay for being unmemorable. How many times did Apple's 1984 commercial run? Once. Once should be enough. So this is what I say about a presentation. Most people are not going to walk away remembering 3 or 4 or 5 things. It's just not going to happen. So if you walk away from every one of these presentations, and even from mine today, with one thing, just one thing that you can implement and do it successfully, then I've done my job, and you have a chance of being successful based on the ability to say all of that stuff. It's like a smorgasbord. If you put it all on your plate and trying to eat it, you're going to puke. Don't do that. Don't eat too much. Don't, your eyes bigger than your stomach. Just find the one thing and taste it and savor it and say, internalize it. I'm running the New York Marathon at the end of the year for my second marathon ever and my second New York Marathon. And people ask me for advice, and I give them the advice that was given to me. Very simple. I said, everyone's going to give you a lot of advice. I want you to ignore all of it, except for this advice. Just pick and choose. Selectively determine what makes sense. For me, it was 2 fast food salt sachets. And I put one on my tongue just before the race started, and I think it was salt when I said I did salt. Now I'm like Trump. And then the other one was at the half marathon mark, and I never cramped up at all. So did it work? Who knows? I don't know. But it worked for me. So just something to think about. Okay, so energy, right? I want you. Don't stand up yet. But I'm going to do a little bit of audience participation. I want you to stand up if you think technology is important. Digital, social, mobile, emerging. And if you don't do what I say, I will pick on you. All right, you're all standing. You don't think technology is important, or you're texting or sleeping? Technology is important? No, you, the guy sitting. Is technology important? Well, he's holding a mic, so stand up. Okay. All right. I want you to, all right, so if anybody doesn't think technology is going to become even more important, you can sit down. I'm hoping you're all standing because I'm feeling mean today. All right, third question. This is an interesting one. Even the sound guy at the back was standing. Why are you sitting down? No, I'm kidding. All right, so your organization and yourselves, you're going to need to be more agile, more startup-like, more lean. You're going to have to move quicker and fail faster if you want to succeed and if your organization is to succeed. If you believe that, stay standing. And then the final question is partnering with startups, with early stage technology companies, with entrepreneurs, with founders, with disruptors. There are those who see things and ask why, and then there are those who see things that could be and ask why not. You're standing if you believe that you can learn something from a startup. Now, we get to a different kind of exercise. I want you to sit down if you agree that you are completely educated. Nothing to learn. You're the guru, the swami of digital innovation. So you're the guru and you're the guru. I think you are, because I've watched you the whole day today, and I've been impressed with what I've seen. No, it's okay. Don't worry. I never read instructions either when I was a kid, and I got a laugh out of her. So, I'm doing all right. We get a little bit more serious now, which is I want you to sit down if you feel not only are you educated, but you've executed to the best of your ability. There is nothing you or your organization or your BU or whatever the hell that stands for could do to... Okay, you're still standing. Last 2 questions. I want you to sit down if you feel completely connected to your consumer, your customer, your prospect, your advocate, your raving fan. The technology, okay, you get the picture, because the last one is with competition. You can all sit down now, right? I have never, ever done this exercise and had more, and I'm pretty sure we probably cut from the same cloth, but I've never had more than one person, the first person ever to sit down. Generally, I have an entire room of marketing executives still standing. And I say, what is wrong with this picture? If you believe the world is changing, your consumer is changed, but you are blissfully ignorant and living in the world of the 4 Ps and segmenting, targeting, positioning, and all this old school thinking, the traditional funnel, AIDA, awareness, interest, desire, action, was created by, I kid you not, a traveling snake oil salesman by the name of E. St. Elmo Lewis over 100 years ago. Our marketing theory is absolutely old school, staid, and broken. And so that's why I'm so excited to be standing in front of you. That's why the whole brand new vision makes sense. Because the next generation of leaders are sitting, not standing anymore, but sitting in this room and elsewhere. You need to believe that because it's the truth. You absolutely need to believe it. So what we did at Evol8tion was we did this on our website. We call it the innovation diagnostic. Between us, because we're friends now, it's what we call a lead generator. So people take it and they answer the questions, and we found something really interesting. What we found is that brands think like innovators and leaders. They identify themselves as leaders, but they act like followers or watchers. There is a disconnect between how they think and aspire and ultimately how they act and execute. Well, we exist to bridge that gap. We exist to help brands use technology to solve real business problems, real marketing challenges, not because they can, but because they can and they have to, because it will save their jobs, it will save their lives, it will save their market capitalization as well. Specifically to do three things. I like to call this sometimes the what, the how, and the why. To maximize the potential impact of digital, social, mobile, emerging platforms. Let's maximize the opportunity to blow our competitors out the water. The how is by partnering with the next generation of disruptors and innovators. This day started with the Elon Musks of the world and the Bon and Bows of the world and all these wonderful disruptors. Now it's time to take your place with them as well. And the why is to become more agile. This is I love quote. For some reason, I love quoting old, white, dead guys. I don't know why. Because they can't talk back. But this guy is my guru. You know, Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I believe technology can solve any business problem, no matter how big, hairy, or audacious it is. We believe at Evol8tion that every brand has a startup soulmate. And we'll help you find yours. But we also believe that every viable startup has a brand soulmate. That's the power of this idea of matchmaking. It's time to find those connections. And we need to do it now. Because if you need a reason to go back to your boss, or your boss's boss, or your boss's 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 boss, show them this data point. Show them this data point that 70% of Fortune 500 companies from 1990 are gone. And 50% of Fortune 500 companies from 2000 are gone. Now, gone means, I don't know, rolled up, dissolved, bankrupted, taken over, or how about just fell out of the Fortune 500? And who took their place? Who do you think took their place? Right. All of these startups, all of these tech companies, who, by the way, all of them built their entire brand and foundation without spending a dime on paid media, on advertising as well. Muhammad Ali said, I don't count my sit-ups. I only start counting when it starts hurting. When I feel pain, that's when I start counting, because that's when it really counts. What does that mean? It means this. It means change happens when the pain of changing is less than the pain of not changing. I'm motivated by two things. And we all are motivated by two things, pain and pleasure. One is pull, one is push. I don't care what motivates you, pain or pleasure. Some people love pain, but that's another story for another day, But ultimately, it's recognizing that no matter what you do, there will be pain. So how do you offset the pain in order to discover some of the pleasure? So we ask the question, what if Kodak acquired Instagram? Might they have survived? What if Blockbuster, they had a chance to invest in Netflix? They turned them down. I don't want to tell you how it ends, but not well for Blockbuster, by the way. And here's the thing. I can give you 1,000, I can give you 10,000 of these what-ifs. This is not theory anymore. We're seeing company after company after company making really big decisions now to partner, to pilot, to accelerate, to connect, to invest, or even acquire some of these startups. I'll stand a little bit back and try not to trip on my wallet as well. I mean, look at, how many of you run in this room and use MapMyFitness or MyFitnessPal, etc.? And owned by Under Armour. What a great way for them to accelerate and ultimately fast-track their progressiveness, their innovation, their commitment to change. And hopefully, your brand will be inserted into that place. And you will take your place in this continuum. Of course, we all know this guy, right? What is F-star? Oh, fucking. Our blades are fucking great. Guess what? Unilever thought that their blades were fucking great as well and acquired them for $1 billion, that's Dr. Evil, $billion as well. Gillette, P&G, blissfully unaware. Life is great. We're the market leaders. And overnight, their world is rocked. Suddenly, Unilever now are head-to-head with P&G in the men's grooming and hygiene category. I just made up the category, but I'm pretty sure there is a category that talks about grooming and hygiene as well. So that's what actually happens when all of this gets together. For the past 5 years, myself and my co-founder, she normally presents at Brand New, but she very selfishly went out and had a baby. I'm very upset about that. She sent her husband, at least, in her absence here. So hi, Rob, as well. So this is what Gina and myself have been doing for the past 5 years. We've actually, as Bonnen was saying, we've been helping our clients create hits. Not talking about it, actually walking the talk. We've created now close to 70 of these hits in the market around the world. This isn't talk. This is about walking the talk. This is very real, and it works as well. We created a process, a bow tie. I call it the marketing bow tie. And I actually created this in my third book, Flip the Funnel, where I took the traditional funnel and then what I call the flip funnel, acquisition and retention, I put it together. And I realized everything in life, everything, I mean everything, can actually be described through a bow tie. We always start generic, confused, ambiguous, and we get super specific, and eventually we create a connection. It could be a love connection, it could be a business connection, it could be a networking connection, it could be a real-time tweet. I can't believe I just said that. It could be a tagline, an idea, but then our goal is to maximize that idea. So this is our process. Educate, evaluate, execute, and exit. That process itself has led to hits like this, like Mobile Futures. Bonnen, I guess he'll always be my client, or he'll always tell people he's my client, but he was our client. Bonnen's vision was the vision behind Mobile Futures, the future in 90 days. 9 pilots with 9 brands and 9 startups in 90 days. Or not your money back. In fact, if the brands didn't execute in 90 days, they lost the pilot program, which you might think is failure. No, it's not. It's success. You succeeded in realizing that you can't move quick enough. Your failure is that you celebrate your failure. Next time, move quicker, and you won't lose the pilot. Bonnen taught me a lot. Bonnen came out with ultimately the 90 days. But he also taught me about the power of PR. There are those who say, those who can do and those who can't PR. Those are probably people that don't understand the power of PR inside the organization. Because what Mobile Futures did was create rock stars inside Mondelez. We created and celebrated the entrepreneurs. And I don't have the data. I can't share the data from the BCG study. But we were looking at being able to kind of control and test and look to see the motivation of some of these young millennial brand managers who, by identifying themselves and becoming more motivated and participating in the program, became rock stars. They could be identified and fast-tracked to move through the organization before they got headhunted and before ultimately they left. Because that is an inevitability. Death, taxes, and young, bright millennial talent leaving your organization. That's why I love the thing. I think it was in his presentation. What's worse, training them and they go, or not training them and they stay? I find that to be a brilliant statement, because that shows you that there's pain either way. You need to choose the lesser of evils. So, we talk about rock stars and hits. In the first 2.5 years of evolution, a lot of our clients left. We did our job so well that literally our clients left. We couldn't grow and get any momentum because they kept leaving. But in the last 2.5 years, what we've seen, and these are some of our clients from Steelcase, from Nestle, from Dr. Pepper Snapple Group, and of course, Mondelez, we've seen them accelerate, and we've seen them, be able to really create change inside their own organizations as well. So, how do you do that? How does the entrepreneur inside become discovered? How do you move and become more lean and move faster? How do you become like an entrepreneur? Well, you have to think like an entrepreneur. You have to understand what motivates an entrepreneur. So it begins with this. What's your inefficiency? This is actually a street sign in Africa, which is where I'm from, not England. So let's look at a couple of them. Hey, do you hear the story about the two dudes in San Francisco could never get a cab or a car when they needed one? Yeah, they started a company called Uber. Maybe you've heard of them. Or what about the frustrated entrepreneur who he snowboarded and he skydived and he did all this extreme sports, but no one was there to capture, if a tree falls in no one was there to capture that moment. He wanted to be able to tell his story from his perspective. Fast forward to GoPro, the fastest and best-selling camera in history. Or, from the sublime to the ridiculous, Run P, you'll all download it afterwards, I promise you, is an app that will tell you exactly when in the movie you can go and pee. In other words, the boring parts of the movie. Right? Brilliant. Just a curious, frustrated, disgruntled, bored, I don't care. But started to ask these questions. And then I thought to myself, wait a second, you guys, the corporate, the multinational, the blue chipper, the brand marketer, you ask these same questions. You actually write beautiful creative briefs, but somehow you don't end up with the same answers. You don't end up with a disruptive piece of technology, a new business model, a new revenue stream. You end up with a damn ad or a tagline or a tweet. You end up with advertising. What if you could actually end up with a different outcome? That's the first part, right? Ask the right questions and get to the right answers. The other one is learn how to pivot. Fabulous began as a place for gay guys to meet and connect. But they pivoted. Have you ever heard of a company called Fab? Of course you have. How about this one? The Point. Looks like it was one of those like GoFundMe type of things. They were ahead of their time, because GoFundMe exists, became known as Groupon or Dodgeball. I'm sure you all know what Dodgeball became. It became Foursquare, which they probably need to pivot again, but that's another story. And Audio, which is an audio podcast directory, became known as Twitter. Finally, Bourbon, which was a place for, actually, Bourbon was what Foursquare is, which is a place now like a Yelp kind of place to like meet and or just discover new places, became known as Instagram. Because what they did is they had what they called pivot days, where everybody had to come in and talk about how they could change and what they could break and how they could fix things. So it's been done before. You all look at it and you all want to be Uber and you all want to be Airbnb and you all want to be Instagram. Well, if you want to be them, you have to be able to act like them and think like them and fail like them and embrace that failure, that risk associated with being able to dare to dream and do something different as well. So that's the evolution imperative. That's what we do with respect to Brand You. We come in and we help you think like an entrepreneur, act like an entrepreneur, and ultimately work like an entrepreneur as well. What we basically do at Brand You is we come in, it's actually kind of, again, quite sadistic, or maybe actually it's kind of a charity in a sense. We don't let you work on your own problems, because ultimately you'll just get in your own way. I often say it's easy to come up with no. You'd be surprised how many, it's so easy for your boss, right? Your boss will come in and give you 1,000 reasons why it's not going to work. The challenge is to get to yes. Find a way to say yes. And so what we do is we actually come in and we take your problems, but then we let other people in the room solve those problems, and ultimately using design school thinking, using what you see at Google and IDEO and all these D schools, what we do is we come up with prototyping and fast tracking. You'd be amazed, surprised, blown away by how in the space of a few hours you can actually solve these problems. And then probably, your bigger headache is saying, oh crap, now how do I justify the other 5.5 months of, sitting on my ass and setting up meetings for the sake of setting up more meetings, for the sake of more meetings, and creating. Sometimes I feel like the bodies that we justify in our fee plans are like Weekend at Bernie's. Like you've got these dead bodies, with the hands like lifting like that in a sense. Let's not try and justify keeping, dumb people in their positions. Let's rather figure out how to elevate and celebrate and empower smart people and allow them to realize their own potential. I don't want to steal the thunder of the panel, of the big debate, but I will, because I'm standing up here until they cut my mic. Intrapreneur versus entrepreneur? I'll tell you the answer now. The answer is yes. It's both. You can go ahead and argue one side or the other, and I know that everyone on the panel agrees it's both. But ultimately, just like if you don't have an employee, how can you serve a customer? If you don't have an intrapreneur, how the hell are you going to connect with the entrepreneur and create these creative solutions? So just I'm looking at the time, and I'm going to wrap up in about 2 minutes, so you guys have time for questions, because I think let's make it at least a little bit interactive. I love hearing the sound of my own voice, but I love hearing your voice even more. I always... New York City, which I've been living in this country since '97, it's the only place where you can literally practice that's another tip. I practice my presentations by walking up and down the streets of New York with my headphones in, pretending that I'm on a conference call. I'm literally talking to myself at the top of my voice, and I look completely normal. And by the way, one more tip, and I swear I'm done, which is the only way to learn a presentation is to talk it. Don't think it. Don't read the script. Try not to have a script. Talk it, right? Talk it, because when you talk it, you see which words tie your tongue. And if you've got 7 bullets on a slide, but you're always talking about the 2, lose the 5. Just focus on those 2 bullets, and then you can create beautiful photographs and imagery, etc. But this is the structure of what we as Evol8tion cover as part of the Brand You curriculum. We actually go, and it's a process that is systematic, that has a number of steps, and has all these unbelievably unfair timelines associated with it. You've got to literally produce 8 ideas in 3 minutes, or whatever the case may be. It's forcing you to be uncomfortable. It's forcing you to move quicker and not take too much time thinking and overthinking. So we start off by taking the brief and then basically breaking the brief in order to reframe the brief. We then move into introducing a tech startup partner, and I'm about to introduce 3 of them that you'll kind of get to know, examples of some of the companies you might be paired up with. So it's one thing to say, well, let me tell you about me and my problems. Now let's hear about you and maybe kind of what you can bring to the table. And once we understand the 2 sides of the partnership, we're in a better position to actually figure out what that connection looks like. Then kind of the brand will come in and say, all right, now it's time for us to kind of follow suit. We started off with our problem. Now let's tell you what we bring to the table. Because by the way, you bring a lot to the table. I just wouldn't fall back on 70 years of legacy and equity. But I would absolutely bring your best practices and what you really do well. It's unfair to say brand, slow, dumb, conservative. You guys have a lot to bring to the table. And so when we can all just put all of our dirty laundry on the table, but also what we believe we do well, we're in a real position to now ideate and to do that really rapidly. And we use kind of crazy 8s as a system, and there are a whole bunch of different techniques and exercises designed to come out and then share out all of these disruptive ideas. Then we power dot, which is, democratically be able to vote up the best idea. And finally, we actually design what the pilot looks like. Don't walk away now. Be very deliberate, very, very specific, very pragmatic, and actually say, this is what the program is, this is how it works, this is how we'll know it works, this is how we're going to measure it, this is what happens if it is at Evol8tion we have 4 different stages to evaluate a pilot. We don't really present this to our clients this way, but the first is the big L, then there's the little L, the little W, and the big W. What we call them is discontinue, pivot, rinse and repeat, and scale with success. I remember when I was director of interactive media at Chi-Day, we always used to say to our clients, the best thing that can, well, we'd say the worst thing that can happen is your website goes down. Right? The worst thing. The best thing that can happen is that your website goes, no, the worst thing that happens, same thing, right? We always want to be so wildly successful that it breaks. But, at the same time, it's a good problem to have, and yet you kind of struggle and find your way between that best and worst case scenario. So that's it from me. Peter Drucker, is he alive today? I think he's dead. Otherwise, I have to change the quote if he's alive. But he wasn't talking about digital innovation. He wasn't talking about mobile futures. But I love the fact he said the best way to predict the future is to create it. Right? That's risk. Risk is relative. I would argue that the greatest risk we can take today is to do nothing. The greatest risk today is to embrace the status quo. Risk is relative. Bill Bernbach, one of the greatest old white dead ad guys, he said safe advertising is the riskiest advertising of all. The same applies to business as usual. And as I said, you guys being here, you've taken the step, to change all of that. So I think that's it from me. That's my contact details. Thank you, guys, and I would love to take some questions. And I want my wallet back. Yeah.
Hi, Evol8tion. Having transitioned to the advertising industry fairly recently from a very conservative industry, what do you think is unique or special about this industry that would help someone as they're trying to become entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs?
Well, first of all, my condolences for coming over to the advertising. No. So, look, the thing that's so great about the advertising world is that it's changing all the time. Now, I'm a sucker for punishment. So when I was at Chi-Day, people would see me coming. The ad guy, my office was literally in a broom closet with cobwebs, and they would see me coming and they would walk in a different direction because I was just going to yap about the internet and digital and websites and email, and it's going to change the world and e-commerce and community and whatever content. How wrong I was, in a sense. So you've got 2 types. I mean, you see new boutiques coming up, every day, in a sense. And then there are some that do a really good job. There are some Droga 5 is killing it right now, and, Crispin Porter did a great job for a while. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to see innovation and change within these agencies. Again, change happens when the pain of not changing is ultimately greater than the pain of changing. So what is advertising anymore? I mean, my belief is run P. If advertising is run P, then I'm an ad guy, in a sense. At Evol8tion, we talk about these pilots, these collaborations falling into 3 camps. Better, cheaper, faster, right? Consumer tech adoption, and then competitive advantage. So what do we mean by that? Well, we tied those down to ultimately, if you go and interview any CEO, they'll tell you that there are 3 things that they care about. 1 is growth, 2 is customer intimacy, and 3 is disruption, or ultimately obliterating their competition. So better, cheaper, faster just says, hey, listen, we've been doing this for, 50 years, and all the old stuff isn't working as well as it used to, or isn't working at all. Let's mix it up. Let's take a risk. Let's change something. Let's try and work with a company that we've never worked with before. So that's the crawl. The walk is utility. The walk is run P. How can we actually make our customers' lives better by actually creating experiences and real benefit for them? And then there's the new revenue streams and the new business models as well. I mean, I would argue, if you go and you type McDonald's into Google, you'll generally see photographs and parodies of obese and morbidly obese people mocking McDonald's, right? So I still have this Nike Fuel Band, doesn't even work properly. I like to say I live in Westport, Connecticut. Martha Stewart was my neighbor in Westport. So we had one thing in common. We're both convicts. She had a bracelet around her ankle, and I have one around, like my parole office is the Nike Corporation. Every day I walk around, and Nike's going, data, 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 data. Jaffe's just giving off more data as well. So, but shouldn't McDonald's have created the fuel band? And for those of you that are going to try and one-up me, they did actually come out recently with some kind of an activity tracker, which they delivered in their Happy Meals, but they produced it so cheaply, probably in China, I don't know, that kids started getting rashes on their skin. Now, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, what they should have done is acquire the best-in-class partner out there that would have helped them ultimately do this properly, not limp in as well. So hopefully the industry you're in and the company that, not the company that keeps you, but the company you keep, literally and figuratively, are part of the solution versus part of the problem. Anyone else? We've got time for one or two more. Don't be afraid of me. I just had too much caffeine today. And vodka. Yes.
When you when you do have an idea, say idea like Airbnb or any of the other ones you presented, and you're in a company, right, and you're a high exec, marketing, whatever you're doing, when is it time to drop what you're doing and fully focus on your idea and what you're trying to build? When is the right time?
Oh, that is such a great question, and I'll try and answer it in 3.5 minutes. Sigh. The first is, if companies don't start allowing you to develop that idea and moonlight inside your company and do it on the side or parallel path it or skunk works it, like Google has their 10% time, you will leave the company. So that's a big part of also why brand you exists in a sense, which is we have to change the way we work and we commit to smart people like yourselves, otherwise we risk losing you. So is that happening today for the most part? No, it isn't. But it has to happen. Internal Kickstarters and Shark Tanks inside the organization. Second part of the answer is you don't always need to start it or create it. The big corporate mindset is we'll do it ourselves. The evolution approach is if you can't beat them, join them. The evolution approach says don't create the wheel if it exists already, just repurpose it. So go out there and find the company that's already doing that and figure how to collaborate with them. Now, we talk about 3 levels. One is the pilot, the test and learn, the experiment, the campaign, the one-off. It's very much the low-hanging fruit because it's the devil we know versus the one we don't. Then there's some kind of a strategic partnership, whether it's exclusivity, a right of first refusal, an acceleration initiative, a multi-month commitment to doing multiple pilots, and then and only then you get to investment and or acquisition. I would probably add a fourth and say I would hope that companies will start creating funds and actually investing in creating these MVPs from inside the company, because that to me just makes sense. The whole thing is, why should VCs have all the fun? Why should actually entrepreneurs have all the fun? Why can't we as corporate executives have fun too by being developers and coders, and investors and accelerators as well? And the answer is rhetorical. I think we should. So hopefully that answers your question. And if you've got a good idea, bring it to me. Maybe we can develop it on the side. Yes?
What do you think about, every single huge corporation, this is my favorite, and I hope I don't offend anybody.
More than I have already? No.
But ADP, is a company that, to me, is a legacy kind of a company because the whole workplace has changed, right? What work means has changed, et cetera. So you see a lot of companies like that and others, I'm just using them as an example, hiring like armies of design thinkers internally to affect change. And I think the thinking was in the past, when IBM came up with the PC, they sequestered a group of people outside of the organization to make change happen so that they weren't infected by the status quo. What are you seeing with all of these armies of design thinkers that are coming in-house? Because in-house, the pendulum has now swung from IDEO to in-house.
So-
What do you think the impact's going to be?
So I also love the question because ultimately I think the best starting point is that every industry is in danger of being obliterated. I mean, one of our clients is Steelcase, which is one of the most progressive furniture designers, and they take the position which is, who uses desks and chairs anymore? We have to create the workplace of the future. We have to be beyond desks and chairs and functional things. We've got to be in the intangibles and the technology business. If you take that position, it's a much better position. In terms of the whole design thinking, we still see too many companies now going and hiring these big consulting companies, paying them 7 and 8 figures to come back with all these reports. We just take a different approach. We're a bottom-up company. Just go do it, for God's sake. Just go and get a win and execute a pilot program rather than overthinking the whole damn thing. That's the problem. We're still looking at it too top-down instead of bottom-up in terms of, like, just do it. That's what Nike said, right? Just do it. I will leave you with one thought because I think our time is up. One company, they were my first client when I moved to this country in '97, was IBM. At that time, they were big blue, they were all about mainframes, and they launched solutions for a small planet, and I was tasked with working on small and medium business. And I was like, what the hell? Nobody believes IBM cares about small and medium business. At the same time, they created global services, and they started showing beautiful human beings in their commercials instead of the boxes as well. And they began to pivot. And so their business model moved from being in the box business to hardware, software, services, and support and financing. They created new revenue streams. Today, look at IBM. They're buying ad agencies, maybe yours. They've bought the Weather Channel. What was the one asset in the Weather Channel that they didn't buy? The actual Weather Channel, the actual TV program. They said, we got no use for that. Who needs a television station? They bought the data as well. And now with Watson, they've created another pivot. So Dad, if IBM can pivot, you guys can pivot. That's probably a good note to move over to the next thing.